Hello again, and welcome to another culinary feast from Cathy Lasher. Here we have the ingredients for Cathy's latest ideas for a vegan alternative to a Passover favourite. And now I'll hand you over to Cathy, who's going to tell you what to do with all these ingredients and how to make them all delicious.
So one of our traditions, and probably one of yours as well, is to have a boiled egg in salt water as part of the Seder. And we're now following a vegan diet, so we don't eat eggs. In fact, it's interesting because I was remembering a couple of years ago, before we were all vegan, when we were still vegetarians and not vegans, we used one Passover 8 dozen eggs. Anyway, what we're doing now instead is, we still want something round and something we can have in salt water to remind us of all the things that the boiled egg in salt water reminds us of. But what we're using instead is potatoes. So we start with some small potatoes that are more or less the size of an egg and boil those for something like 12 to 20 minutes until they're soft to the touch and you can cut through them very easily. So then take each egg and cut it in half lengthways so that you have halves that look like this. So after you cut up the potatoes, you make a mixture which includes the vegan mayonnaise, the Dijon mustard, the cider vinegar, the turmeric, and the black salt, kala namak. They're called black salt, but you can see that it's pink, but it smells very much like eggs. It's got a sulfur smell to it. You can find it usually in like a place that sells Asian foods or Oriental foods. Mix all that together, and then what you do is you take a melon baller or a teaspoon and you scoop out a little ball of flesh from each of the potatoes. This is what we're basically making here is the egg, the equivalent of the egg yolk. I'm just going to mix up the potato flesh with the various ingredients that I put in here. So just mixing that up. And if it's not quite yellow enough, because I don't think that looks much like an egg yolk yet, I'm just going to put in a little bit more turmeric to make it just a bit more yellow. That amount of turmeric doesn't really change the flavor, but it just turns it a little bit more egg yolky. So when that's all mixed up, you get a teaspoon. You could do a piping bag, but I find that's more faff than it's worth. You get a teaspoon and you put in the center of each potato egg a bit of yolk. And when they're all filled with their yolky bits, you take a bit of paprika. I'm using smoked paprika, and you just shake just a very little bit of that on as a garnish. And there we go. Vegan boiled eggs. They can now serve in salt water at your Seder.